just gonna start the podcast with a sneeze.
Okay,
That was like right as this was counting in, Amy goes, "I have to sneeze," and I'm like, "Oh, jeez." We're just gonna like open the podcast. Is gonna be a sneeze because we don't edit this, guys. In case you can't tell, like I don't trim this. I don't edit it. We just record it and then throw it up on the internet because that's how it goes.
You know what? It's winter. My kid has a cold. I'm sure that I have something that she has because she smells like she has a cold. Does that make like any parent out there knows what I'm talking about? Their kid smells sick. They give off different pheromones when they're getting sick.
I don't know if I know that one yet.
Oh, Megan
maybe
does.
I don't have the nose that you do, but
we call it the super sniffer. That's what this is, the super sniffer. But I smelled her this morning, waking her up, and I was like, oh no. Oh
jeez. Like a bloodhound for colds. Like a bomb sniffing dog for viruses.
Yeah. Well, it was M's holiday concert last night, and I walked into the Portsmouth High School, which is a large building. I walked in and I went, and Miss Parody is here, which was her third grade teacher. And she's like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "I can smell her."
That's alarming. That's like
she was like 3 hallways away. I'm like, "Oh."
That's so alarming.
Well,
it makes me uncomfortable.
And like I went into the Kittery Nike outlet because I needed new gym shoes, and I was with Emerson again. And I was like, "Huh, it's weird. It smells like my brother, who lives an hour away, mind you." So I was like, "Huh, it's weird." Guess who walked around the corner? I was like, "Oh, hey, Kev." Like, I knew you were here. I could smell you.
That's absurd, and also like makes me super concerned. Like for my own, like for my part in this, I'm like, because I don't smell great.
Nor does my husband. Nor does my child. If we're being honest, they're the stinky, like because they have like sweaty hands and feet, so they are stinky humans. And
I try my best, but like it's a different stage of life than I'm like. I used to wake up and shower before I went to school, and I don't do that because I got to be at the gym at 5:45.
Yeah.
And so, like, by the time people come in for the 8 o'clock class, it's like, listen, put on some deodorant this morning, but
I turn my sniffer off essentially when I'm at the gym.
I feel like you would have to, because that's a rough place to have. That would be.
It's a strange environment.
Yes.
So much happening. All right, sorry. No, wow, we are so good at staying on topic.
We haven't even gotten on topic. We're not even staying on topic. We haven't even gotten on topic. So today's episode, which I believe is we're going to put out on like the day or two before the new year, is I tried to be I'm like thinking ahead. I'm really proud of myself. So this is going to be 23 lessons from 2023. So these are things that I learned, was reminded of, or had confirmed in 2023. Some of them are lighthearted / stupid. Some of them are a little bit deeper. Some of them have things that I learned myself about fitness, and some of them are about life and correlate to fitness and nutrition and all these kinds of things. So I attempted to put these in an order that would make sense. We'll see if it makes sense. So it'll be kind of stories oftentimes for how, like the hallmark for when I learned a lot of these lessons. Some of them carry over, and we're going to see how this goes. This is a different style of thing, but I'm interested in it, and I'm excited. I was excited to make the list. It was kind of fun to like think back about what happened this year, because it's very easy to be like February was a long time ago. Like last January was a long time ago. A lot has happened in that amount of time. Oh wait, hang on. Give me 1 second.
Pulling up your Google Doc.
Yeah, I have to pull it up. So
interesting year.
So here we go. Number 1. This one makes sense to be number 1. Start before you're ready. Mm-hmm. So the idea that you're going to be ready to do anything, like totally ready, I feel like is a silly concept. because we're never fully ready. It's like the parenting thing, right? Like anybody asks like, oh, am I ready to be a parent? Like you're never ready to be a
No.
parent. Like there's times where you're definitely not ready. Okay. So like, but there's never a time where you are ready and arrived.
Mhm.
So like this podcast as a for instance, when I first started it, I started it a little over a year ago, but like I started it, I didn't have a name for it. I didn't have a microphone. I didn't have anything. Like Amy started coming on. She's like, I don't know how I'm going to be, and she crushed it and has been fantastic. I recently, and I don't think I've told this story on the podcast, but it's going to be relative to both of these. This week, actually, as we're recording this, has been something called Impact Education Week in the industry, where there's 70 people in the industry who pre-recorded a talk, and everybody can kind of go in and watch these presentations, and they're about a variety of different things: becoming a better fitness coach, starting a business, growing a business, building a community, um, and then I think the last one's like becoming a speaker or something like that, like having an influence. And they did an open casting call. Basically, the guy who runs it just sent out an email to a couple thousand trainers who were on his email list and just said, hey, I'm opening the doors for 5 people who I wouldn't have necessarily asked ahead of time to do a presentation as part of Impact Education Week. So just submit an application. This is what you have to do, and we'll pick some people. And I have entertained the idea that 3, 5, 7 years down the road, I could have an interest in doing some of these presentations, from going to a few of these events that I've done this year. My history as a teacher and public speaking is not something that like really, I don't have a bunch of nerves doing public speaking. It's something that has kind of been a natural thing for me for a long time. But also, I think that there's some things that I've learned through this experience of building my business that have value and I could be helpful with down the road. And so I was chatting about this with a few other coaches, and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna submit an application to this thing, fully expecting not to get it,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think that I'm ready yet to do it. I knew that in my head, I was like, I'm not ready yet to do this. I don't feel like I've done enough in the industry. I don't even fully know. I was like, I have a few ideas of things that I could talk about, but I don't have like a clear, okay, this is 100%. I ended up landing on something. Like I had to submit a bio for the application. I was like, I don't even know what my bio is. Like I haven't done it as part of this, like I'm like, what am I putting on here? But I was like, I'm going to do it to get a rep in the idea of like, all right, I'm going to practice this. And I learned, all right, I should probably figure out what my bio is. Like that was part of it. Practice doing a submission to learn from it, maybe get some feedback from the guy who runs it, Nick. Things that I can improve on, do better. And also just put my name on his radar as somebody who might be interested in it for 3 to 5 years down the road. So I'm like, I'm going to do it before I'm ready. I'm going to start this process before I feel ready for it. Because if I wait until I'm ready, it's going to almost be a little bit too late, because there's a runway, there's an on ramp for doing it. And so then if you like want the results when you want them, if you wait until you're ready, the timeline to get ready is hard. So you kind of have to start and you kind of figure it out along the way. And so I submitted the application, and again, fully expecting not to get it. This is not a story about like, oh, this is, if you start before you're ready, you're going to get it. But I actually did get picked, which was wild for me, to get picked. But even then, right, then I had to do the thing, right? It was one thing to like submit the application, but I had to build the presentation, which I had not done ever, like built a presentation on slides and stuff like that. I had to figure out what I was going to say. So like I had a general idea, but I was like, all right, what am I going to say? What are the stories I'm going to tell? What are the key take home points? What are the action steps that they're going to take from this? I had to build the presentation. I had to record the presentation. and submit it. And then who knows, like, but like I had to do all of that before and every step of the way I was like, dude, I'm not qualified to do this. Like, from a full perspective, like and I'm not being humble or whatever. Like, people who are presenting at this thing, like, are legends in not just the fitness industry, but in business across the board. Like, one of the guys his name's John Berardi. He created Precision Nutrition, which is the nutrition certification that I have, and sold it for like $500 million. You know what I
Oh,
mean? So, like, giants in the industry, people who've been in
yeah.
it for 30 years, and then current leaders in the industry who've done it for 15 years, who I went to these presentations to talk to, and who've built massive businesses, 7-figure, 8-figure businesses, and have large followings and have a lot of runway. And there's me who does not yet have a website, right? Like, I'm not like discounting but like, on the levels of things that people have accomplished in the industry, I was at or near the bottom. Not
Mhm.
because it's just because I'm newer to the industry, and people have done it for a long time. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of benefit to starting before you're ready, because by submitting before I was ready, I probably accelerated the timeline on me doing this. And I don't know if I was any good at it, right? I could get feedback and be like, your presentation was terrible. Everybody who watched it stopped after 2 minutes. Like, we thought you were going to be good at this, but clearly you weren't, right? Like, there could be that, and there's some feedback, whatever. But like, at a minimum, for me, from a feedback perspective and all of that, I'm going to get all of that a year, 2 years before I thought I was going to.
Mhm.
So that accelerates the process for results if you're willing to start sooner. Just start and do it imperfectly.
Do it
So,
imperfectly. I like that.
related to that, number 2 is do it scared. And this is my wife told me, she's like, that's an Elise Myers thing, right? You know who Elise Myers
I
is?
love her. She reminds me of Meg Murphy so much.
they do the hair thing, like, I feel like very similar. Like, every now and then I'll see Meg, and they got the hats and the whole thing, but so
I
fantastic.
love
Like, love Elise Myers. And I said, yeah, I know that's an Elise Myers phrase, but Elise Myers also didn't invent the phrase "do it scared." She made it
probably
fairly
not.
popular.
Yeah.
But the idea of "do it scared," and I'm not claiming this is something that I invented, right? None of these are original Jeff thoughts, right? Like, maybe they are the way that I frame them, but "do it scared." Like, I was nervous to do that. I was nervous to try that.
Mhm.
Um, but you put yourself out there a little bit, and but fear is always going to be present.
Mhm.
We're never going to do things in the absence of fear, because if we waited until we weren't afraid to do anything, this is the same thing as waiting until you're ready. Like, you're going to be waiting for a long time. It's
Mhm.
not that fear isn't present. The people who are successful, and this is not like tooting my own, like, people who are successful feel the fear, and this is a title of a book. So again, I didn't feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mhm.
Because when we're
I feel like
faced
it's
with, go
necessary
ahead.
for like confidence elasticity. So like the more often you try something that when you're afraid to do it and you're
Hmm.
successful, it's going to like allow your confidence to stretch a little bit more each time you're about to try something that's terrifying. But it's also going to allow you to recover when things don't go as well because it's
Yeah.
it's elastic.
But I love what you said there, because you become more of an action taker when you do things when you're scared, and you become more confident to try other things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people who are stuntmen, right, didn't just one day Be like, all right, I'm going to jump off of a building, right? They jumped off of something smaller first, and they were probably scared that first time. Anytime you do something new, it's going to be to some degree scary. It's just a matter of
Mhm.
how much that scary is going
Yeah.
to impact you.
Yeah.
So then going alongside that as well is this is again, none of this is original, but action. We have to take action precedes motivation. So this is number 3. Action precedes motivation in this way. Taking action leads to results, and results leads to motivation,
Mm-hmm.
which leads to more action. That's the circle of motivation. So motivation is a momentum game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something to be dismissed or belittled, but we can't wait on motivation. We create motivation by doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a momentum game. It's a snowball effect. So I told this story last episode, I think, about like I got to take a shower and I put it on my to-do list.
Yeah.
Did I tell this episode?
That's any parent. You know your
Yeah.
parent when
Yeah.
showering is on your list.
But this was the setting was this. This was like a week ago where on Wednesdays I have the twins home with me. And so my only window to get anything accomplished is when they nap. And it's 50-50 whether they nap for any length of time or more than an hour. Sometimes they nap for 3 hours and sometimes they nap for 45 minutes. So it's a little challenging, but I was like, I got to do all of these things. And the idea that I was going to write, after I put them down, sit down and write 3 programs for clients, which was one of the things I needed to do, that just felt too daunting.
Mm-hmm.
Just with where I was at. I was like, I'm not motivated to do this. All I want to do is sit on the couch and scroll or watch TV or just veg. But I was like, okay, I know I need to shower. I'm going to do that thing, which is a low barrier to entry thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I do that. I feel accomplished because I did something. So then I'm motivated to do the next thing. And so the next thing was I'm going to make the bed. Right? I'm going to make the bed. And like I made the bed 2 for 2, right? And then I put on real clothes. And then I like, all right, that was 3 for 3. Like not sweatpants and a sweatshirt.
What? I don't know.
Like jeans. Like I put on jeans. Yeah, which I don't normally do. I'm wearing jeans today. Crushing it.
See, I'm wearing Athleta pants, but they're like Athleta dress pants, so they're still super stretchy.
Yeah.
Like, these are the greatest things ever invented.
They're like kind of sweatpants, but kind of dressy pants.
Correct.
Yeah.
Question. Your to-do lists, are they like cross out or check boxes?
These are check boxes.
Yes, okay. I knew we were the same.
Yeah.
I knew we were the same.
So did that. And then I came down and I sent a couple of text messages that I needed to send.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm 4 things in that were increasing margin of, and now I'm ready to sit down and write programs.
Yeah.
But it was a snowball effect where I had to take an action that I knew that I could take. You have to do something that's low barrier to entry. And it might not be the end goal of what, and this is what my whole talk was about for coaches in terms of how do you help your clients be successful. If you come into the gym and my goal is to bench 135 pounds, and I just say, all right, get on the bench and I'm going to put 135 pounds on there and let's just see what you got. And you've never bench pressed before, you're going to get buried and you're going to think that you can never do this. So you have to start with something that's almost easy and be like, all right, I can do more than that. Like dumbbell bench 10 pounds, crushed, right? That was easy. Let's try 15, right? And we progressively make it a little bit harder, but that feels like not as big of a jump until you're at a point where you're like, it's not an unreasonable jump from where I am to try for 135. Like if I've done 125 pounds, it doesn't feel like an unrealistic jump to go from 125 to 135. If I've never bench pressed, that's too big a jump. And so if you're looking for motivation, we have to start with action that is super attainable. And it might not feel like you're doing anything, but checking the box, accomplishing the thing is going to give you a result of like, hey, I did what I said I was going to do. which is going to make you motivated to do more things. And eventually that's going to keep snowballing in the correct direction. Versus motivation is a momentum game. If I don't do what I say I want to do because I maybe reach a little bit too high, then the result is I feel like crap because I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm not motivated and I don't do even easier things. And this is how we get into the pit. And I do this all the time where I'm like, I can't even bring myself to go to the grocery store or like do a basic thing, not because the thing itself is too hard, but because I've gone too far in the other direction where I'm like, I can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way out of that is to start by taking a small step of action that you know that you can do. And it doesn't feel like a lot. And especially when you get down there and you feel like I have so much to climb, it doesn't feel like that's moving the needle. And it's not.
Yeah.
But you start the motivation train going in the other direction, in the direction that you want to go. So along with that, number 4 is expectations drive perception. Perception drives reality. What that means is if I expect of myself something, whatever it is, and I do or don't do that, that is going to affect how I perceive myself, my situation, whatever. And then if I perceive myself that way, that's who I become, right? This is the be, do, have cycle, right?
Okay.
If I expect myself to, let's use a nutrition example. If my expectation of myself is I'll use a math example because this is a great one. This is the best way to do it. I used to teach math, and I'd have kids who would walk in on the very first day of school, have not met me, have not been in my class, don't know anything about what I'm expecting of them. They walk into class and they say to me, I'm bad at math. That's their expectation. And they might have learned this along the way, but that's their expectation. And so their perception of themselves is that they're not going to be able to do it. And so then they can't do it. Not because they actually couldn't do it. Whether or not they could do it is like it's not even a factor in the equation, but because they expect that they're not going to be able to do it, then their perception is, I'm looking at this and I don't know what it is. It's like it's foreign to me. And then the reality is they can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we have to have reasonable expectations of ourselves. Because if we have an unrealistic expectation of ourselves, we're always going to fall short of it, which then we're going to perceive ourselves as a failure. So then we're not going to do the thing. Right? If I expected myself to lose 20 pounds in 2 months, and then I lose 8 pounds in 2 months, I'm going to perceive myself to be a failure. And so then I'm going to think that I'm a failure. And so I am a failure. Whereas if I had expected that 8 pounds in 2 months that's like fantastic progress, which it is, right? Even 4 pounds in 2 months is fantastic progress. If you look at that and you're like, oh man, like I really did the thing, like good for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden, this is that motivation game, right? The results, but they're determined by my expectations of myself and of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Just changing your mindset and your manifestations.
Yeah. Well, it's just what's the bar that I'm trying to live up to? Because if you have a reasonable expectation of yourself, it's not that you're lowering the standard, but you're being reasonable. Clear the bar, then set the bar higher. But if let's do a high jump example, right? My brother was a high jumper, and he's 6'3" and was a collegiate decathlete. And so I think his best high jump was like 6'8" or something like that. 6'10", just ridiculous. He was a ridiculous athlete. He goes in and he's like, all right, I can jump 6'4" like with no warm-ups. right? If I go in expecting with little to no training and 5 inches less to keep up with my younger brother, I'm going to feel like a failure
Mm-hmm.
because the bar is like quite literally too high for me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, how did my brother get to that? Well, the very first time he jumped over a bar, it was probably 3 feet high.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, okay, I can do this now. So now I'm going to do the next thing and the next thing. So this is the be, do, have cycle. In order to become the person who does the thing, I got to do the thing, right? I do the thing, whatever it is. And then I become more of the person who does more of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that cycle keeps going. And then the byproduct of that is I have the result.
Mm-hmm.
So the person who comes into my math classroom who's like, I can't do math, right? Well, they've gone the other direction, right? They've done some things and then they felt like they didn't do it right, or somebody told them they didn't do it right. So then they became the person who doesn't believe that they can do math. So then they don't do their math. Like they don't do it in the negative.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way out of that for them is they have to do something. And then they're like, oh, at least I tried. Like I tried and there was something good there. So then maybe I'll try some more things. And I'm a trier, and then I can figure some stuff out, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm a good problem solver. Oh, I can figure this out. Oh, I'm actually halfway decent at math. And then
Yep.
the result is they become good at math, but that comes from them trying things even when they're not comfortable. So then, linking to this, number 5 is if what you're trying to do, your plan is so tight that one hiccup throws it off, there's no chance that you stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
This is where, and I don't want to be insensitive to this situation, but like imagine a budget, right? If I'm living paycheck to paycheck, right, and then I get a car repair that comes
Mm-hmm.
in, it's going to jack up everything, right? Versus, and you can be paycheck, like I know people who are paycheck to paycheck who make 6 figures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Paycheck to paycheck is not relative to how much you make all the time. Sometimes it is, but it's a matter of having a plan. And if your plan is so tight, and oftentimes people who are paycheck to paycheck maybe don't have quite the plan dialed in. That's not always the case, but if you have the margin for error is so small that one hiccup throws you off, you're going to constantly be playing catch up.
Mm-hmm. And the stress that causes in your life wreaks havoc on all other parts.
This is why. So there's two sides of this. Like 75 hard, as a for instance, and I don't want to get too into the 75 hard thing. Maybe we'll do a whole thing on trends in the fitness industry. But the idea of 75 hard is like you're going to do this perfectly for 75 days. There's like 6 things that you got to do. You got to do it perfectly for 75 days, or whole 30, right? You're going to do this perfectly for 30 days.
I mean, 30 days is at least shorter, but 75 days is a long time.
It's a long time. It's like 2 workouts a day. One of them's got to be outside. You follow a diet, progress picture every day, read 10 pages. Like none of that is like unreasonable to do, but the challenge of it is the standard of you have to do this perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And if one thing gets tripped up, then the whole thing's a failure. And it all comes crumbling down. So we can't have it be too tight because otherwise we're not going to be able to stick with it. I need to go quicker than this, but this one's going to be quick.
I don't know what you mean. You were quarter of the way through at half hour. It's fine.
We're fine. It's going to be fine. Well, this one, but so this is related to that, which is like for me, right? The idea that I'm going to have a nutrition plan that doesn't include pizza. Like if I had to be so tight that I couldn't have pizza,
Oh my gosh, yes.
that would be something I'm not going to stick with.
Mm-hmm.
And so number 6 is, this is a lesson from 2023. And the number 6 lesson of 2023 is that cheese pizza is the best pizza.
100% agree.
Cheese pizza is the best pizza. You can add toppings, that's fine. But you know what's awesome about cheese pizza is like you can have a ton of cheese pizza and not get wicked full. And it just goes down smooth. It's like pure. It's fantastic. I've like doubled down on this year. Like in past years, I'm like barbecue chicken is good, and meat lovers is good.
They're all good, but they all bastardize pizza. Pizza is supposed to be pizza, sauce, cheese, crust.
Fantastic.
That's it.
And I've done this because we do pizza for the kids, and they're just gonna have cheese, and so I'm like, I'm not gonna get a half and half pizza or whatever. I'm just gonna get a cheese pizza,
Mhm.
And I'm like, this is so good. This is so good. Like, I'm just gonna eat
It's
this
like
thing.
when you talk about making protein the hero.
Yeah.
I always think about like you're taken away from the hero if you add anything else to it. And all of those crazy people who add pineapple and ham, I'm like,
Oh,
you can't taste the pizza. All you taste
well,
is like I love pineapple and I love ham. I think they're delicious. I don't want them
no.
anywhere near my pizza. But
Yeah,
because all you taste is whatever topping you're putting on.
for
Those
sure.
people who put green peppers on, what are you thinking? That overwhelms every other flavor. So yes, I agree with you. Cheese,
Yeah. Well,
the
and
best.
I'll link this. This is like a 6A. Eat the real thing.
Oh yeah,
Like, don't
cauliflower.
cauliflower pizza, or just like, if you want pizza, eat pizza. If you want a cookie, eat a
Mhm.
cookie. Like, you're gonna
Like
you're gonna always be
crustless pizza.
wanting the, yeah.
It
Um,
doesn't satisfy. If you try to do something else, it never satisfies.
no. All right, number 7. Shifting gears a little bit. Surround yourself with people who push you to be better. So this has been a constant lesson for me, but we're the product of the people who we surround ourselves by. So, but it was something that I intentionally did. Amy's gone off the screen, but I don't know if we can still hear her.
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you, but you're gone off the screen. You'll come back in a second, I'm sure. Surround yourself with people who make you better. So this is something that I've done for a bit. I've known for a bit, but I've made an intentional effort this year to do, and particularly in the industry, which is I've gone to multiple in-person events with other coaches, many of whom are included among the list of people who are on the, part of the week that I mentioned earlier, and spent time with them, had conversations with them, like got to know them, whether they're people who are kind of in a similar stage of their career to me, or the leaders who are further ahead, or the legends that have been around forever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but every time that I am in a room with those people, you become the average of the people around you. Like, if you're
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by a bunch of people who, and all you have to do, like the best example of this is any of my small group classes.
Mm-hmm.
So my small group classes, like somebody comes into glute camp for the first time, or somebody comes into my 6 a.m. Ignite classes for the first time, and there's 18 people in there, like lifting heavy things, or glute camp. There's 10 people in there, like we're doing RDLs, and Ken's is doing 185, or you're doing 155, or you know what I mean, trap bar deadlift, hip thrusting 275, 315 pounds, right? You
Mm-hmm.
see people doing heavy things
Mm-hmm.
that pushes you to go do, like, okay, this isn't a class where I'm just going to use 10-pound dumbbells the whole time,
Right.
because it pushes people out of their comfort zone, because you see what other people are doing and capable of, and you're like, you know what, I think I
I
can
could
do
do
some of
that
that too.
eventually.
Yeah, but I'm gonna try to raise my game to be part of what they're doing. They're gonna lift me up.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the flip side of it is, people who pull you down. So one of the questions that I ask people before we start working together is like, what does your support system look like?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have people who are going to be part of this journey, with not necessarily, like, they don't have to hold you accountable, but like people who are going to be like, you can do it. Like,
Yeah, it's
you
so
can,
important to have your people.
you're going to be the result of those people.
Mm-hmm.
And so those people are oftentimes, so this is an analogy I think I've used before, and I will continue to use to the day I die. Um, and this is going to be related to number 8, which is coaching as a life hack. Coaching in any form is the closest thing to a life hack, because when you climb Mount Everest, you've probably heard me say this before. When you climb Mount Everest, you have a Sherpa, and a Sherpa is somebody who lives on the mountain, who climbed it hundreds of times, who knows where to go, where to not go, when to stop and take a break, when to push through, all of this, right? They know how to do it because they've climbed the mountain before. You need a Sherpa. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can do it maybe by yourself, but it's much more dangerous. It's going to be much harder,
Yeah.
and you're much more likely to fail
Mm-hmm.
versus having a Sherpa. A coach is a Sherpa. That's all that they are. They're somebody who's experienced success and knows the path to get there. They know when to push you and when to say, you know what, let's pump the brakes a little bit. They know where to go, where not to go, and they can see further ahead than you can. It accelerates the process.
Mhm.
It's like when you learn to drive, you could probably learn to drive if you got behind the wheel of a car in a parking lot by yourself and just kind of started messing around with some of the pedals. Like you could kind of figure it out, but you
You figure it
certainly would crash the car at some point
out. Mhm.
and you'd probably hurt yourself, but you'd eventually figure it out.
Mhm.
Versus you have somebody who teaches you, somebody who's good, right? There's a difference between a good or a not good teacher, but somebody who's
Yeah.
gonna like, you're gonna do this, but I'm gonna show you the way to do this. Definitely don't do this. Make sure you're doing this.
Mhm.
Hey, you're ready for this next stage. You're probably not ready for that yet. That's what a good coach looks like. It accelerates the process. Now, when you climb Mount Everest, you also typically are with other people
Mhm.
who have maybe not climbed the mountain before most of the time and are experiencing all of the challenges alongside you, experiencing them differently. You're each climbing the mountain on your own. The Sherpa doesn't climb the mountain for you, right? It's not like skydiving where you're on their back and they're basically doing the whole thing. Okay. The only thing you have to do is like not look down when they push you out of the plane. Like that's the only thing that you can do to screw up skydiving. I've never
Yeah.
been skydiving, but like that's the
Nope.
idea. But they're doing the skydiving. You're just along for the ride. When you climb Mount Everest, you're climbing the dang mountain. The Sherpa's just there to guide you, right? So you're going to do the thing, and the people there with you are climbing the mountain too. But you can commiserate with the hardships. You can celebrate the victories because you're all experiencing them for the first time. So it's valuable to have both peers along the journey. So this is 7, surrounding yourself with people who are going to push you to be better, but you also want somebody who's going to show all of you the correct direction to go. A gym setting is a really good example for this. Everybody in the class,
Yeah.
right? Versus the coach. And if you're in a class, like I've taught some classes where people are just content to come in and use their 5-pound dumbbells and just, chat and have a good time and then leave, right? Nobody's really getting better there. No matter how good I am, right? If the people around you aren't, like, it's just going to feel out of place to be like, all right, I'm going hard, right?
Mhm.
And no matter how good the Sherpa is. And also, if you have a bunch of people who just show up who are like, we want to get a workout in today, but they don't really know how to build a workout, they might move and it might be fine, but it's going to be
Mhm.
okay. So this is where people kind of get the accountability thing wrong, where they're like, oh, me and my friend are going to do this together.
Well, we're
Well,
going to go to the gym,
yeah.
and
If neither of you know what the heck you're doing,
right.
it's the blind leading the blind. Like you're both going to get lost.
Mhm.
You need somebody to kind of show you the right way to do it. So coaching is a life hack. I did the math. I'll do the math again this year. But last year I spent about $25,000 on coaching. This year it's been more, on like business coaching and even coaching for fitness, because and maybe this is, 8A, there's no greater ROI than return on investment than investing in yourself.
Mhm.
There just isn't. So now, a coach might have told me not to do this, but I've learned it. Number 9 is a pint of ice cream every day is too much ice cream. So if you don't know or haven't heard this story, I ran an experiment, and this is going to be related to number 10. So number 10 is walking is the best fat loss hack there is. But to prove that, I ran an experiment. For the attempt was to go for a week. I did not make it a week. I made it 4 days, where I was going to walk 12,000 plus steps a day, and I was also going to eat a pint of ice cream, but a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, which is about anywhere from 900 to 1,300 calories a day on top of my normal nutrition, right? It was just going to replace my evening snack. And I got like really, really quite sick. It took me like 2 weeks after that for my stomach to feel normal again. Like went to the ER because I thought I might like I don't know have appendicitis or something. I was like, what did I do to myself? Really, and I've never had issues with lactose, but it was a lot of ice cream. It was a lot happening there. So
It's an extreme amount of ice cream. I also think many people could have told you that was not a good idea.
100%. And there were people who did ahead of time.
Terrible.
But I was again, this was like the idea. In hindsight, I probably could have just like, all right, one day I do a pint of ice cream, then I do like half a dozen donuts, and then I do like a whole, I could have done different things and it would have probably felt better versus doing all dairy. But again, it was going to be simpler to just say I ate a pint of ice cream every day and I walked 12,000 steps, like, less variables. But in that time, I actually lost weight by walking. So we did a whole episode, the one about walking. So you should go check that one out. It was part 5 of the building blocks of fat loss. So I'm not going to dive into too much into it here, but walking 100% is the biggest fat loss hack there is. Is to walk more. If you're not walking, walk some more. And it's great for your health and your mental well-being and all these kinds of things.
And your motivation, like going back to whatever 2 or 3 way back in your list from 40 minutes ago.
Thanks.
Walking, it is such a, like you said, low, was it low resistance entry?
Low barrier to entry, yeah.
Low barrier to entry. So I started walking to work. It didn't do it at all in the summer or the fall. But as soon as it got really cold and bitter out, I started walking to work every day. And it's really lovely as a way to start your day and a way to end your day, if you're being honest. Leave all of the frustrations and stress on the street.
Love it.
So thank you for that.
Great. 100%. We're going to get quicker here. This is going to come together. Number 11, don't take early flights, the first flight out, particularly if you are traveling to the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've told this story on the podcast of like I took the first flight out when I was flying like west, and so I had to wake up at like 2 a.m. like thinking that 6 a.m. is not that early of a flight, but I had to wake up at 2 a.m. to be able to get to the bus stop, to get to the airport, to take my flight, and then I'm flying other time zones back, and so then we stay, and then the first night there we're staying out until 10 or something like that local time. So I end up being up for like 24 hours, and then I'm just a wreck for like 4 days afterward. So I'm telling myself that with the hope that I don't make that mistake again in 2024. But yeah. All right. These next few are gonna be related, and they're somewhat related to what you and I were talking about ahead of time. But it's gonna be for me business, but family and things like that. Number 12 is more isn't always better. What does that mean? People are constantly kind of thinking about what's the next thing, and it's not a bad thing to continue to be ambitious, but when it comes to like weight loss, okay, I lost 20 pounds, I want to lose 10 more. I'm doing well with this. I'm with business. I'm making X amount of money. I want to make more. With social media, I have this amount of followers. I want to get more, because it's more is the next thing, but more isn't always better. And so I'll talk about it in the context of like social media as an example. For me right now, so like I just hit 1,500 followers on social media on Instagram, which is cool for me. In terms of like, hey, I've been super consistent with this. That's really the benchmark. But like the natural inclination for somebody in my position is like, oh, I want to grow my social media following, right? Like it's almost a barometer of success. It's like, hey, how big is your following? And there are people out there with very large followings who are fantastic. There are also people out there with very large followings who are jamokes. But it is a little bit of a qualifier for like, who is this person? How qualified are they? Right. However, I know people who are in kind of my peer group who have a little bit larger followings. I have some who are even bigger followings, like 100,000 plus, but even some who've started to grow in the 10, 15, 20,000 followers, which is like, feels like a territory that is not unattainable to me. But I don't know if I have a desire to go there. And the reason why is, and we talked about this at the beginning, before we started, the more audience you have, there's a couple of things that come with that. You're going to get more disgruntled people, more trolls. You're going to get more attention. So you're going to get more people just on there to be obnoxious. And also it's harder to maintain depth when it comes to that. So when I think about social media, for me, the main purpose of it, certainly I hope to help as many people as I can who are watching it and be helpful. But to be totally frank, the purpose of social media for me is for my business. And it is a mechanism for me to help and be useful and have it be a brand building thing, but also as a mechanism to meet people who could be potential clients for me down the road. Like, just full disclosure, that's part of it. Like, I have a business and that's what I'm trying to do. And if you don't realize that and you're listening, like, there you go, but probably could have figured that out. So for me, I can't have 10,000 clients the way that I do things. I just can't. I couldn't have 5,000. I couldn't have 1,000. I don't know if I could have 200 the way that I do it. So the idea of getting more followers doesn't necessarily move the needle for me. And my business actually might make it harder because I can't go as deep with the people who are there. So depth is oftentimes more interesting than width. So going back to the physical side of things, people often think, all right, I want to get leaner, right? I want to get whatever, more toned, whatever it is. I want to go further. But success is not the same thing for everyone. So this is kind of bringing this back. Is having a, and so that's number 13. And number 14 is there's a cost to everything. So all of these are related. So let's just take having a 6-pack as a for instance. Okay. There's a cost to having a 6-pack. I can't have pizza as often with my kids. I can't go and have, like, it doesn't mean I can't ever have it, but it's no, I have, you can have visible abs, but like to be Instagram model, crazy, wicked lean, like even people who, what?
Like Rob McElhenney?
Like Rob McElhenney or even Don Saladino, who's the guy who trains Ryan Reynolds, who I respect. And Don does things that I'm not as willing to do. That doesn't mean that they're good or bad, but there's a cost to what it is that he does. Now, part of it is for his brand, right? He trains superheroes. That's his brand, right? People want to look like Ryan Reynolds, want to look like him. So he's got to do it. But there's a cost to it. There's a cost to him being that lean. He has to say no to more things. And success looks different for different people. So for Don, for him, for his business, and for even his physique, success for him is looking a certain way, or for a bodybuilder, right? Success looks different than it does for the parent or me who has 3 small kids, who's just trying to like look, feel good, and be able to do the things that I want to do with my kids. It's a different success standard. The same thing is true in business. So we had a meeting of kind of a mastermind that I'm part of. And we were talking about like, hey, where do we want to go in 5 years? Like, how do you want to grow your business and whatever? And there are people in this mastermind who are in a place where they're like, and that have already grown to this point or have a desire to grow to this point where they're making $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 a month in revenue for their business. And they have multiple coaches working for them. And now for them, their desire, their success is, I'm going to grow a really big business. And there's nothing wrong with that because they're certainly helping a lot of people and and it suits their lifestyle and whatever, right? For me personally, where I'm at, I don't have a desire to have a massive business where I'm just a businessman and I'm not necessarily coaching as many people, because that's the part of it that I love. And also the cost to doing that would be time with my family, as a for instance. Like if I could grow my business more, and I've said this before, like I'm choosing to make less money now, not because I like don't want to make more money necessarily, but it's like the cost, the trade-off of it would be I would have to pay for more childcare or figure other things out to have more time and have less time with my kids. And for me right now, I'm choosing to make, that doesn't mean that it's not hard, right? There aren't times where I'm like, oh man, like wish that my kids were somewhere else, or like this isn't a difficult choice for me. And it's hard for me when I'm in conversations with these other coaches who are making this amount of money and even by themselves, who don't have a bunch of coaches working for them but are crushing it. And I'm like, oh man, like I kind of wish that I could do that. And it doesn't mean that you can't look at somebody who has a six-pack and be like, I would kind of like a six-pack. There's nothing wrong with having a desire to have it, but it's, you have to count the cost and measure the cost of doing it. So more isn't always better, because for you, success might be different and you might not be willing to pay the cost. So those three things, 12, 13, 14, are all kind of linked together. And it can be applied to everything.
Yeah, it's true.
All right.
Doing great.
Crushing it. Number 16. Three-nagers are way harder than the terrible twos.
Yes.
Terrible twos get a lot of hype.
Yep.
They get a lot, and like we're in it right now. The twins are in the terrible, like they just turned 2 and they're doing it. Mine and
yeah.
But let me tell you something. Three is it doesn't mean that there's not, right. It's very much the highs are higher, but the lows or the hards are harder, right? So I want to draw this up one day, but it's like I don't know when this shifts, but to this point, it's been 100% accurate. At the beginning, like when they're a newborn, the highs are nice, right? But like the highest thing with a newborn is you get a nice little snuggle, right? And the cute little smile. It's like, all right, that's a nice little moment. But it's all right, that's nice. But the hards are like, all right, you're not sleeping all that much.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the moment, it feels like this is incredibly difficult. But then you look back on it and you're like, that was not all that hard.
It was lovely. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
And then you go a little bit, further along, and all right, now they have a little bit of a personality, but then the hard is they're crawling and they're getting into stuff, and then now it's twos, and so now they're cute and they're doing fun things and they love you, daddy, and bye bye, and they say cute things and they do cute things, but they're like they're 2 and they're like, no, mine, they don't, whatever. 3, like our 3-year-old it has some just outstanding, exceptional moments that are wonderful, but also has some moments where I'm like, bro, get it together. Like, what are you doing? Like, just having a meltdown over just nothing. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? But the highs are like as high as anything. And so I don't know if it just keeps going through, older, or at some point it starts to level off a little bit. But
so it gets easier for a few years. Mm-hmm. Whereas the highs are much more consistent and they're really lovely and they last a long time. The lows are still there, but they're short. Mm. And then that whole thing flip-flops. So you have very, very low lows that last seemingly for eternity. And then they like you again. And then that goes away.
Yeah. So
it's real fun.
Yeah. So that was something that I learned, but like we've also like blacked out the twos, and so Megan said to me last night, she's like, I don't remember Levi being like this, and I was like, no, he was, but like
your brain does that. Your brain has to do that. The same thing happened to Megan, which is why she wanted to have a second child with the bonus child, because your brain blacks out how horrible pregnancy was and how horrible your delivery was. It's proven. There's
mine hasn't. Mine did not.
No, yours hasn't. Hers had to in order to procreate again.
Yeah.
So it's survival. As a parent, you have to black out some of those really rough things, or you would never do it again.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, we stopped at 1, but that was a choice we made before we had her. And there are times where I'm like, wow, I really wish we'd had a second. And John's like, what?
No. You don't. All right, that was 15. We're moving now. We're crushing here on the back half. 16, zoom out. It's hard to see success day to day. And this is relative to parenting as well, right? The common phrase for parenting is the days are long, but the years are short, right? If you zoom out on let's take the stock market as an example, right? I use this all the time. Like any given day, it could spike or it could plummet. But if you zoom out long enough, 30 years, it's a trend line up.
Mm-hmm.
right? If we look at my weight, even that I've been doing during this time, this little mini cut, like I've had multiple days where it spiked up to or above where my starting weight was, but my
Mm-hmm.
overall trend line is down. But the day
Mm-hmm.
to day, it's difficult to see movement.
Yeah.
Just like your hair, right? And we've talked about this a bunch. Like you don't really notice your hair growing. You don't really notice a lot of things until if you
Mm-hmm.
zoom out and you're like, oh, that looks different. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to give yourself perspective to see that. But you also need, and we talked about this, like embrace, we talked about this on the last episode. You have to own the starting point. You have to own the low because that's what gives you a relative reference frame when you zoom out for the high.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of not related to that, but preparation makes success much easier.
Oh
So
my goodness,
I've
yes.
said this before, um, that I really like watching, Gordon Ramsay cooking shows. And
Mm-hmm.
there's moments where I'm watching these cooking shows and I'm like, if everything was cut up for me and portioned into perfect little bowls, and all I had to do was add them to the pan in the right order, I feel like I could probably be. I mean, I'm a decent cook, but I would definitely raise my game if everything was
Mm-hmm.
like. But he might have done that, right? Like he did the prep work, and it makes it that much simpler to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a win in the challenge group that we're running right now yesterday,
Ooh.
which was awesome. Which was a woman was like, I came home and I didn't have anything for dinner, but I had this like pre-cooked ground turkey, like I had cooked it the day before,
Perfect.
and I just did that. I had some frozen veggies and I put some like red sauce on it, and I might add a carb later, some pasta or some rice or something like that. Just by having the turkey pre-cooked, it made,
Mm-hmm.
again, the barrier to entry success significantly easier because you had prepared ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that everything needs to be meal prepped, but you're making success easier by just like, if I have the chicken cooked, it's way easier for me to just go in there and cut it up and throw it on a wrap with some veggies and have a lunch. Versus if I
Mm-hmm.
have to go cook the chicken, it's
Mm-hmm.
not as likely that I'm going to get it done because it adds 20-25 minutes. So
Mm-hmm.
put your workouts on your calendar. Like set yourself up for success. So all you have to do is just show up and do the thing
Mm-hmm.
versus trying to do all the setup in the midst of it. So if you're having a hard time with the action piece of it, sometimes just setting yourself up for success makes all the difference in the world.
Mm-hmm. It's totally true.
So with that, if you've set yourself up for success, it makes it much easier to be successful because you also have played it out ahead of time, right? You've prepared and you've planned to some degree. And so I'm borrowing a phrase and tweaking it for fitness, from Ramit, who I think I've talked about on this podcast, Ramit Sethi with "I Will Teach You to Be Rich." But
Mm-hmm.
his phrase when it comes to budgeting is, and I'm just going to tweak it for this, to enjoy your favorite things guilt free. And this is actually true for everything. To enjoy your favorite things guilt free, you have to mercilessly. Let me try this again. To enjoy your favorite things guilt free, you have to mercilessly cut out the things you care less about. So this is
Mm-hmm.
true with budgeting. This is true with nutrition. This is true with anything.
Yep.
You can have anything to some degree, but you can't have everything
Right.
when it comes to nutrition, right? Like I can have pizza, I could have brownies, I could have margaritas, I could have whatever I want, but I can't have all of it all the time whenever I want.
Yeah. Right.
The same thing is true with money, right? We've talked about the vacation versus going out to eat example
Mm-hmm.
that Megan and I do,
Mm-hmm.
right? We can go on vacation or we can go out to eat regularly.
Mm-hmm.
We can have either one, but we can't have all of it.
Right.
We could do both of them in moderation, but it's usually better to, what Ramit says is, you dial up on the things that you really love and then just
Mm-hmm.
cut out the things that you care less about.
Yeah.
So like instead of thinking about, oh, how can I like sneak pizza into my, do the cauliflower pizza or whatever, like so I can have it in moderation along with some other stuff. No, have like the real pizza. Like go and make an experience. Like get your favorite pizza and have as much of it as you want. Right? Don't do a skinny margarita, get a real margarita. Like, do the real thing. Dial up on the things that you love, but the way to do that is I don't eat chips.
Right.
I don't eat cheese and crackers. You know, I you have to cut out all the things that, even if I might like them, right? I like going on vacation. I might like these things, but I have to cut those mercilessly with no remorse, because I want to be able to enjoy these other things without any guilt at all.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're cruising. That was 18. 19.
What? Well,
If
really
you
fast
laugh
now.
at something a toddler says, they will say it for a week straight.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Just he'll just keep saying it, and then he'll be like, and then if I stop laughing at it, he's like, "Hey, Daddy, you remember when I said?"
Remember that time? Remember?
What did he say? Oh, this is the other day. I put it on my stories. He said, "When yogurt grows up, it turns into ice cream." And I,
Oh, but that's
like,
very cute.
out
Very
of
smart.
nowhere, it was hysterical, and I
Yeah.
laughed at it. He said it 7 times that morning.
Yeah.
And then later on the day, he's like, "Hey, Daddy, remember when I was talking about yogurt and I said it was like ice cream?" And just laughing to him. Just makes his day to make, he's a performer. So,
And
just
we've
be
had
aware,
instances.
pick your battles. Or
Oh
we
yeah.
had friends over and he did something and one of them laughed and he just kept on doing it, man. Just was a ham about it. And they were like, "I'm sorry." And I'm like, "It's fine, but just know that this is the rest of our night now. Like, this is the rest of
who
your
you are.
interactions with him. This is his whole personality for the next little bit."
We've had to institute the rule of 3 with Emerson because she's
Mm.
I mean she's 9 and she still does the same thing. It doesn't go away. So if she tells a joke or tells something that's funny, we just, like, that's the first time, and then she gets 2 more times, and then we're like, okay, it's not funny anymore, and she's like, oh, okay, and then switches to something else. So it doesn't go away.
Well, all right. So I guess we could say that if you say something a child says, if you laugh at something a child says.
Yeah.
All right. So these last 4 are all somewhat related, and I'll start with the story piece of it, and then we'll go into the other 3, and they are maybe my favorite 3 pieces. So number 20, potty training is the hardest part of parenting so far. I have yet to experience anything. And again, we didn't have a colicky baby. And this is including when we had newborn twins and a 19-month-old, and Megan had COVID the week of Christmas. And I was solo when they were a month old. The month that we did the week and a half or so that we were like initially doing potty training trumped that. It was way harder.
Mm-hmm.
And now maybe our kid is harder. Like, some people just, like, they just get it, I don't know.
Yeah.
And he's still
Stories
struggling.
are harder to begin with.
And he still struggles with different components of it. But far and away the hardest part of parenting so far. I'm sure that at some point I will laugh about that, but that was a tough one. And so the 3 lessons that are kind of related to that, but are related to almost everything but they were really great reminders in this. Number 21, we control the process, not the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
We are a fruit-focused people. What I mean by that is we look at the tree and we look at the fruit. And we say, "Oh, wow, it's grapefruit." But we don't recognize, like, the fruit is the last part of the tree to come in, right? It has to be a healthy tree. We control how the tree grows, and then the fruit's going to come or it's going to not, right? We control the process of what's happening and not necessarily the outcome in a lot of ways. Think about the scale, right? I can control what I eat, how much I walk, whether I work out, when I go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But I cannot necessarily control what the scale is going to do, particularly, all right, I have 3 small kids. I can control when I go to sleep. I cannot necessarily control if I make it through the night without a child waking me up.
Right.
So I can't be upset if I only get 6 hours of sleep if one of my kids is awake in the middle of the night. Now, if I went to bed at 11 p.m. because I was scrolling on Instagram, that's a process problem.
Yeah.
But I can control the process. With my business, as a for instance, or posting on social media. This is a great example. Posting on social media. I can control how well I write. Right? I can try to get better at writing, better at video. I can try to learn more about social media. I can post regularly. I can engage with the people who are engaging with me.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also had things that I was really, really proud of not do great.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had things that were dumb do really, really, really well in terms of reach or whatever. That's the best example of it. So like I've posted the same thing multiple times, and the second time I posted, like the first time I posted it, it did great. And the second time I posted it, it flopped, or vice versa. Like what the most shared post that I've ever done that wasn't a reel was the pants don't lie post. The first time I did it, it reached 15,000 people. It got shared 300 times or something like that, 500 times. It was nuts. The second time I posted it, exact same post, exact same caption, exact same hashtags. It was like 1,500 people. You can't control the outcome. You can control the process. So thinking about the potty training, I can't control whether or not my kid pees in the potty.
Right.
I can't do it. He's another person. I can control the process through which we set him up for success, and then the process with which we respond to him afterward. That's all I can control. And at some point, the outcome follows the process.
Mm-hmm.
But the process part of it is freaking hard,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're not seeing the outcome.
Yeah.
So that's number 22. You have to embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Embrace the fact that this is going to be hard. Things are hard. They just are. But just like we talked about the highs and the highs and the lows of the lows with kids, and I posted this this was another one. I posted this reel 2 days ago. And it was a story from a little over a year ago. And I just reposted the same exact thing. You might not know that I do that, but I do that on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just repost things because they're good and I'm proud of them. I told this story, but it's you can have, as a parent, you get the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
You get the absolute best of your kids, the sweetest moments. They're going to come to you. But you're also going to get the hardest of the hard.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't get the hard, or you don't get the good without the hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like my friends will get cool moments with Levi. You know, my brother will, my mom and Megan's mom will, and they see them often. Like they'll get great moments with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But they like some of the pinnacle moments with our children have been just for Megan and me.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom and all of those people get not quite the degree of hard with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Megan and I get the hardest of our kids.
Mm-hmm.
But
you save it up for you.
You have to embrace the hard, embrace the suck, embrace the difficulty of it. Mm-hmm. You gotta love the process of it being hard. Mm-hmm. Because you know that that's the part that you can control. Mm-hmm. And the outcome is going to come as long as you don't quit. Mm-hmm. As long as you don't give up, you're going to get there. And so that's number 23. And if you have followed me for any length of time, you know what number 23 is going to be. Just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming. When, like, that scene is like, what do we do when we don't know what to do? We just keep swimming. Just keep on going. Keep on trying. Keep on moving. Because at some point, it's going to happen. And mm-hmm. I said this, I think, on our last podcast, but the point at which you want to give up is the point at which most people do. And that's why they don't win. Mm-hmm. So embrace the hard. Embrace that this is the most difficult. And keep swimming through that. Keep swimming through the process. Focus on the tree. Mm-hmm. The fruit is going to come as a byproduct of that.
Yeah. I like that analogy. The tree analogy is really solid.
I can't totally take credit for that one. And by can't totally, I mean I definitely can't. Most things that I say are not 100% original by me. That was from a pastor. He was talking about. He was like, we're a fruit driven people because we focus on the outcome and we want the outcome of whatever it is we're doing. But you don't get the outcome without being connected to the source, the vine. Like without filling your own cup, you can't pour out. So
Mm-hmm.
we're in control of the process, not the outcome.
Yeah.
So those are my 23 lessons of 2023 that I came up with.
Pretty good. It's a lot of stuff you learned this year, my friend.
Oh, I'm sure that there's a lot more, but those are the 23 that came top of mind when I made the list. And you know what? We didn't do as bad as I thought we were going to do.
I expected this to be at least 6 hours long.
It was not looking great at the the I'll be honest with you. The first few were fairly
You're on
lengthy.
number 3. I was like, oh my God, it's been 40 minutes and we're on number 3.
We're going to be fine. I had faith in us. We got there because I knew that they were going to be a lot of these were going to be related to each other.
Yeah.
Like I tried to chunk them.
That was your co-host. Your co-host didn't know that a lot of them were going to be related. I was just
sneaky that way.
Oh, no. Not good.
So I'll say this: if you've listened all the way through, I would love to. If there were any of these in particular that resonated with you, I'd love to hear it. If you had a lesson from 2023, let me know. And thinking about 2024, what are some things that you are going to bring into 2024 with you? I'm not a big New Year's resolution guy, but I do think that we take opportunities to reflect and opportunities to look forward. And there are naturally given opportunities to do that. And the New Year is one. But you can do it on any Tuesday, right? But the New Year is one of them. And so if you're listening to this right around the New Year, maybe this is a time for you to just take a look back, reflect. What are some things you learned? It was a pretty cool exercise for me to do this, to like think back to like January, February, because we did potty training in March, and to remember some of that. And think
Sorry,
about,
you had to relive that.
Well, it wasn't the worst. All right. Well, hey, it's been a great year. Excited for 2024. Gonna dive in. And that is it. Appreciate y'all listening. We'll talk to you soon.